Thank you, Patricia. So last year, a group of cross-bench parliamentarians, including, we're having the panel tonight, Allegra and Spender and also David Pocock. So you guys reviewed the ideas of increasing the rate of GST, which is at the moment, 10%. So fairly speaking, and also that could have very little impact on people, for example, from the eastern suburb of Sydney, or maybe the vast majority of people from Canberra, where like maybe median income is like 25% over the median, the national average. So my question is, how do you guys justify this proposal in the middle of the cost of living crisis, where the medium and also low income households are struggling with increasing rents, mortgages, and also utility bills?
Okay, so
thank you.
Interesting question. I'll start with you, David Pocock, because you did say GST should be on the table.
I think it should all be on the table. I do think GST is a massive distraction from other reform that we absolutely should be doing, like investment property reform. It makes no sense to have a system that treats housing as an investment vehicle over a human right and something that everyone in our community should be able to afford. The petroleum resource rent tax. We hear so much about the budget surplus. Well, if we wanted one every year, we could actually just get something for the gas that we export. 2022, $93 billion worth of LNG was exported. Not a single cent of petroleum resource rent tax. And they say, oh, well, corporate tax. Those exporters paid 1% corporate tax. We're getting totally dudded. So, I thank Allegra for putting tax reform on the table, and I do think all options should be there, but I agree with you. I don't think GST should be the priority now. I think for me it's right at the end. There is so much more that we can and should be dealing with, and actually making really sensible changes to shape the economy into something that works for us, that works for all Australians, and is not ingraining this intergenerational inequality that is really becoming so real for people.
Do you want to see the GST increased?
Look, I've been really trying to drive tax reform, and I think it's a very good question. A lot of people are worried about GST because, they say, well, if you increase GST, won't that hit the poorest the most? And the truth is, it's how you do it. Like if you just increase GST, yeah, that would fall harder on poorer people. But if you're looking at, GST plus compensating people from the lower parts or the people who don't have as much income, then you could use this as a tax move that actually benefits a broader economy. The thing that I worry about when it comes to the tax system is really three things. I worry about intergenerational inequity, that we're leaving young people behind, and that we're more and more reliant on working people and the personal income tax. And that's really problematic. We actually have to fix that. I worry that it impacts productivity, that we don't have the right taxes to actually drive investment and growth in this economy. And I worry that our tax system holds back action on climate change. And so why I'm saying every tax should be on the agenda, GST, it should be part of that. But, absolutely, the distributional impact should be made sure, because you're right, people are having a really rough time right now, and the roughness isn't spread across the country completely equally. Okay. Some people are finding it much tougher than others.
So I'd love to see some hands up. Like, if your income tax was lowered, but GST was increased, so there's a trade-off, would you be prepared for a higher GST? Hands up. It's a minority, but there's some hands up. More than I actually expected from my own assumptions. That's interesting. So...
Can I just jump in for a moment?
Yeah, you can.
Sorry, we shouldn't be talking about how much tax we collect. We should be talking about how we tax. And our tax system needs to focus on three things, in my view. Firstly, incentivising people to work and to work hard. Secondly, incentivising people to invest in the economy. And thirdly, incentivising people to innovate. And our tax system is clearly not doing those things at the moment, right? And there is a disproportionate burden being carried by working people in this nation. And when I say that, today, the working population, so income wage earners, is the lowest it's been in this country in generations, largely because there's been a huge demographic shift with the baby boomers retiring. So the people carrying the disproportionate burden of our country and the services we provide are wage earners. Now, that burden is going to become too much. So we need to talk about comprehensive tax reform that incentivises investment, hard work and innovation.
Okay, and Cos, what happens when you take that to an election?
Yeah, so the problem you have is that they're not being paid enough, right? Particularly when we're looking at Australians living in the outer suburbs and regions of this country. So we can talk about tax, but the fundamental problem right now is that they're not getting paid enough. And when we're talking about household incomes here, the most common thing that we always do when the media is focusing on this particular subject matter is you're focusing on the 100,000, 150,000 annual income households. But the majority of the people that are going to get hurt the most, unless something's done about their wages, are those that I've just mentioned. That's where I think Labor's policy about Australian-made sinks to.
Because
right?
Can I just respond to that by saying bracket creep is going to hurt those even more because they're earning the same amount of income, but they're paying more tax because the tax rates haven't been adjusted. So we want more people to be able to take more income home. That is a good thing for everyone. But right now, working people, because of bracket creep and a lack of reform, are carrying a disproportionate load.
What do you
It's not
reckon,
fair.
Felix?
I would. Thank you. So I would say, well, the budget is gonna be delivered tomorrow, and so instead of so think about how asking for money. So have you thought about let's say trying to managing the budget more wisely and also more responsibly as well.
Janine just agreed with you.
I'm with you.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't finished yet. So thank you. So we don't know about the budget coming up tomorrow, but let's look back, the last year budget, 20 million was spent on, for example, things like, improving the quality of the regional dirt. 10 million was spent on, let's say, the waste educational program and also trying to teach Australians to use the right color of the bin. So we just don't know if we can save more money from that instead of asking for money from the vast majority of people. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting point, Janine.
As I was listening to Matt, the same old, bracket creep, the same old platitude, tax reform, what do we want? We are awash with money. It's how we spend it. You've cut to the chase here, and state governments are as bad, if not worse, that everybody expects the federal government to do it. I hope we're going to get to where state governments aren't helping much either. I mean, look in this city, the suburban rail, $200 billion. We won't go to AUKUS, but there is a lot of money, you're absolutely right. And tomorrow in the budget, over the years, as Pat will know, there's all these little things we find, obscure
budget
ones,
paper number
little
2.
things, yes, and they're all amusing, and some of them are really good and worthy, but there's little pieces. At the end of the day, the money's there. Yes, it'd be nice to cut it down. We want budget reform, tax reform, but it really is about spending it better, and it comes to the quality of our policies.
David?
Agreed.
I mean, the big part for me is why are we not taxing our fossil fuel exports? It is insanity.
I reckon we're going to get to that one, so we'll just press pause and get to the next question. We'll keep this discussion going with a question from Ian Abbey.